Data visualization is a growing area within Updata analytics, and more users are wanting to visualize data in different ways. Of course, technical analysis itself is a visualization of the data. So here I look at one of my layout screens. I've got a point and figure chart, an Ichimoku cloud chart, a market profile chart. These are all different ways of visualizing the data. So taking that beyond just technical analysis is a natural progression for us at Updata. So if I look at some of the things that you can do with data within Updata Analytics, and it can be is something as simple as just looking at a heat map. What is it, the visualization here? Just seeing different currencies here in this screen, for example, in this market map, where we're seeing literally where you're trading in the day. So this is the end candle on all of these charts effectively, so you're seeing a bit of today's chart you're seeing the end of the chart in this kind of visualization. So this is just a very basic form of visualization in the basic form. Here, for example, we're seeing an option screen. This is just coming from your classic sort of options screen. You just take the chain and you can actually just straight away see the strategy, and you could do this for different data sets. So really just another way of visualizing the data. One of the most popular areas, especially in energy markets, is that of forward curves. So here, for example, I've got a curve of RBOB, and there are lots of different things that you can do with this curve. So, for example, I can just I can take contracts on and off. So these are all the different contracts plotted out into the future. I can see what this curve looked like 5 days ago, a month ago, so I can just literally see how the curve's been changing. I can even just see how it's changed in the last day, and not surprisingly, we see a lot of action happening at the front of the curve. You could even do curve spreads, so I could say, okay, I would like to see this curve versus another curve. So if I so I've got RBOB here, let's say I want to look at heating oil, I can do that, and then I can see a curve spread. So this is the spread between the two curves. So another way that you can actually visualize the data. And of course, behind every price on this curve is a history. And from this screen I can open a watch list, and here I see the front of the curve, and that price on the front of the curve is effectively the price history. And so behind every point on the curve is the chart price history. And if I take that a step further, we get to a 3D forward curve. So on the front here is the curve, at the front of the curve, and then behind the curve is each history. So I can then start to get a surface as to how that curve is moving. So that's just another way of visualizing the data. All sorts of things you can do, like volatility smiles. There really isn't any limit to the ways we can visualize data. Here, for example, this is an OTC consolidated broker curve for German power. So I see the daily contracts, the weeks, the months, the quarters, and the years all on the same chart. So that again is just another powerful way of looking at the data. Of course, one of the other things that's really powerful, if I want to let's take a new curve, and I'll just go and open a curve of let's just open that RBOB curve again. And so what I can do is I can say, well, I want to see the combination of this curve and the price. So I can actually overlay this data onto the curve. So I go to my NYMEX data, I go to RBOB gasoline, and I'll take the front continuous contract, and that's going to marry these two data sets. So here is the price of RBOB, and here's the curve. So we see into the future. The one thing we can see about this curve is that's probably almost certainly not how the price is going to behave in the future. Of course, the curve is an indication of what people are prepared to pay for RBOB now, not necessarily where the price will be in the future. If you want to know where the price will be in the future for RBOB, then you would use something like a point and figure chart. So we could easily just go and do that. If I take the near side contract, Shift T, and that gives me a heads up as to where prices might move to, and here I've got some targets. So really just another visualization of the data. If I look at things like outage data, we take data from so many different data sources and we are compatible with so many different data sources. Here is a seasonality chart, for example, so I can see 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago and 5 years ago how the seasonality of this ERCOT outage data. Here we see fuel groups, so we see data by fuel group: coal, fuel oil, renewable energy, so you can do this as a chart stack, this sort of thing. Here we see natural gas outage data into the future, planned outages, so we actually can see 2016, 17 and 18. So this ability to visualize data going forward and taking that outage a step forward, we can look at all the different power stations. This is data from IIR, so we can look at all the different power stations and then get a visualization of those power stations. And if I want to hover over, then I can grab in that hover window all the different data that's associated with that power station. So it gives me a very good overview, and again, outage data into the mid next decade. So really quite valuable in terms of just thinking about how you might visualize data, and that's just another aspect of using your Updata system.